Tim, welcome to the people of Utah.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited you're here, man. So I first came across you because you have a really cool Instagram page, Provo Local Foodie.
Yeah, at Provo Local Foodie.
Tell us about how that came to be and what you're doing with it.
That's a really good question. So I am a person of many interests, many passions. I started Provo Local Foodie because I was in like my third or fourth year at BYU. It's taken a little bit of a longer turn to graduate, but I also kind of planned on it that way. So I'm doing math education. Originally I was doing just math, but I really liked the education, liked teaching, and that aspect of things. And so I switched to math education, but then I also taught at the MTC for 2 years and that sort of thing. So have allowed myself to take a little bit of a longer time and have really pursued a lot of my passions. One of my big things that I tell myself is I'm not going to wait until after I graduate to start my life. I'm going to start it now. And so that's what I've really been doing. And so relative to Provo Local Foodie, I really started exploring. I really like to try new restaurants and that sort of thing. So I started exploring all different sorts of restaurants in the area. And the story of it goes, of the formation, is I was at Taste. Are you familiar with the chocolate factory down in downtown Provo? Yeah. So Taste at the chocolate factory, there was a woman who was coming in. She was working on preparing, it was like a mother and daughter. The daughter was working on preparing some stuff for her wedding and just figuring out some plans, some things activities that they can do and that sort of thing. And Taste, the people there are amazing and they know a lot of different things to do. And I found myself also kind of sharing, oh, there's this cool restaurant or there's this cool experience that you could have. And I had started a list on my phone previous to that I would just send out to friends of top 20 restaurants, the best places around in Provo, just because Provo has a really cool food scene.
100%.
Anyway, so I was talking to her and I was like, wow, I really, really like doing this. I want to build this a little bit bigger. And so I kind of was thinking in the car, called my dad and was like, hey, is there anything I can do with this? I don't want to make this my life, but can I monetize this? Should I monetize this? Could I become a newspaper, write in the newspaper and do critiques or whatever? And ultimately kind of what we stumbled upon and what we ended up with is just that I would do a little foodie page and have a little list of all the best restaurants in Provo. And so that's what I've done. My social media is a little bit different from different other social medias because the focus isn't really being an influencer. I don't see myself as a big influencer or even really content creator. Or kind of social person, but it really is about the information and it's about the restaurants. And that's the big thing is even if I'm not posting, I'm still going into restaurants. I'm getting to know the owners. I'm getting to know their stories. And then at this point I have been to, I think I have a list on my phone actually. Yeah. It's over 300 restaurants, locally owned restaurants in the Provo-Orem area.
I didn't even know there's that many locally owned restaurants in Provo-Orem. That is crazy.
It is extremely dense. So the interesting thing about Provo is we have the double college town kind of going on where we have UVU and BYU. And historically, most of the UVU students have also lived in Provo as well. We're seeing a little bit of a build out into around UVU campus and that sort of thing.
Yeah, out in Vineyard too. I wonder if there's any restaurants out there coming up sometime, I bet.
Yeah, so. Well, Vineyard just has a lot of money as well. So, but then there's all of the professors. So lots of highly paid jobs, lots of disposable income or income for dating and that sort of thing. And then you also have a really big international cuisine, international desire where you have lots of return missionaries, lots of just multicultural in general. There's a lot of different people from all around the world that come to Provo or come to Utah and bring their cuisine with them. And so what you end up seeing, restaurants have a really fast cycle. You have probably seen different restaurants that have come and gone in Provo during your time here. And so restaurants, lots of times their lifespan is 6 months to a year and a half. So what happens, the restaurants that stay are just the top quality in each of their genre. So we only have one Dominican restaurant, Que Loque, which is in northern Provo, but it's really, really good. Yeah. Or We have a Filipino place called BFF Turon. No, not BFF Turon. It's their sister restaurant, MMK's, and it's right across from the rec center. And it's really, really good. And so you just like have a lot of niche restaurants that are really good at what they do. And it ends up that you have like a really, really unique, cool food scene in Provo. So that's kind of how I ended up here. Is it has slowly grown from there. And my philosophy on my passion projects is like water what grows. And so it's like the things that have gone well, I've worked on growing them. At one point, this was going to be like maybe a coupon card or something like that. And restaurant owners were like, no, we're kind of burnt out from the starving student card. We don't really like that. We don't like that. And I'm like, okay, I'll just keep this like a friendly marketing thing, free for everybody kind of thing, just a resource. So
that's cool.
That's how the brand came to be.
Love it. I love that. And then you also have these cards you're fidgeting with are part of this as well, right?
Yeah. So in addition to...
Can I see one too?
Yeah, go for it. You will probably recognize a good handful of restaurants on there. But in addition to the Instagram account and that sort of thing, I put out these Provo Local Foodie cards, which is just a little list of all the best restaurants. And there's a digital version on my Instagram, but then also like at different restaurants, I'll put up little stands and stuff like that.
This is awesome. And you have it broken down by like regions across the country: Latin America, Asian Pacific, African, European, American.
So the other thing, importantly, to be on this list, it's not just that you're the best in that category, but it's that you are an amazing restaurant. Like I put the restaurants on here first and then categorize them.
Like a check mark for where you've been to. That's cool.
No, yeah, you can just do the little check mark and stuff like that. But like you'll see like there's a few different Japanese places because there's like lots of different. So there's like Yamato, which is kind of all around Japanese. There's Kei's Kitchen, which like has Japanese food, but not sushi and ramen. Like it's just Japanese dishes kind of thing. And so there's a lot of different like kinds of restaurants. Or one of the things, I don't like to hate on restaurants, but one example of a restaurant category that isn't on here is like a French bakery or just bakeries in general. Like there's not a bunch of like super top tier bakeries in Provo. There's Ambrosia, which is actually kind of the best bakery, and it's a gluten-free bakery, but it's also like the best bakery. But also like the French bakery Bianca's isn't like super authentic French bakery. It's a fine bakery, but like I have a sister-in-law who's from France, and she's like been there, and she's like, yeah, it's all right. Like they don't do anything like super special. But yeah, since Fillings and Emulsions has left, there's like no like super high tier, and so I just don't have them. I don't have anything on here, and so what my goal is that if you are having a date night or you have a little bit of money to go out, you can be like, hey, what sort of food am I in the mood for, and then pick anyone on this list, and it'll be a really great experience.
That is fantastic. I love that you've done that. That's great. Do you have any idea for a vision or I don't know, future direction you want to take this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So a lot of the projects that I have and projects that I work with are tied into bigger goals that I have just for myself of the ways in which I want to impact the world and kind of my own personal experience, my own personal vision of like how I can make an impact. And for me, one of the biggest things is as a community builder is bringing people together, like helping people establish deep roots, helping people connect and that sort of thing. And that's ultimately one of the main core parts of Provo Local Foodie, and a lot of times how I assess, like, is it doing well? Is it doing what I want it to do? Because there was a time, and I might still do it in the future, of like working with some of these restaurants and helping them have social media pages and having that be like a kind of having cheap options for social media and that sort of thing. And I've thought about it and I'm like, okay, is that really what I want more of in the world? Is that the kind of thing that I want? Is that going to drive, like, is that just going to drive commercial activity, or is that going to drive like more people coming together? Because culturally, like, food can be a really great introduction. Like, food, dance, and art are all like, I mean, dance is part of art, but like kind of food and arts and that sort of thing are great ways for people to be able to slowly understand and experience a culture. And so just generally, that's kind of, the backbone of what I try and do with it. And so that is like the future of it as well is, so I will work on. I've done some stuff with Downtown Provo Inc., which is a nonprofit that does stuff in Provo, but just working to help the economic sector of Provo do better, specifically so that Provo can become a better community, specifically so that more people in Provo, like especially college students at BYU, can become part of the Provo community and the food community and that sort of thing. Because I think that's one thing, especially where we are right now in the world, that's really hard, is that a lot of times these communities are breaking down. So wherever I can work to build community is kind of where I tend to go with it. So no like specific plans, but that's the vision moving forward. And if I ever stop doing Provo Local Foodie, it'll be because it kind of has fizzled out and is no longer accomplishing that sort of thing.
Very cool. I love the vision, and I love where you're coming from with that. Are you from around here originally, or where are you from?
Yeah, great question. So I'm from San Diego originally.
Okay.
So pretty good food scene there, and then have traveled a little bit around the world, and just my parents are big foodies as well. But I came to Provo in 2016. So besides my mission, which I served in the Philippines, also, like, I don't know, like, it can count as a multicultural experience in some ways, and obviously is, but, like, I think that's a little bit of a discount of, like, actually living in a place and, like, fully experiencing their culture. Mm-hmm. But still, like, that is part of kind of my, a little bit of well-roundedness. Besides a mission, I've been in Provo for, like, 9 years, and I really... there was a talk given by, or a BYU devotional, I think it's Arthur C. Brooks or David Brooks. One of the Brooks. Yeah. I don't know. I don't even know if they're brothers or what. Anyway, but they gave a devotional about a nonprofit called Weave, which is like working on creating community. And they talked about how there are these people that are weavers, and the biggest determining factor is if that person is making connections, but also like how long they are rooted in a community. And I decided early on that I really wanted to stay in Provo. So I'm planning on living in Provo my entire life as well.
Awesome.
I've really fallen in love with Provo, which I think is, again, this is my hot take, is that Provo is really cool, but a lot of times the reason we discount Provo is because of BYU. And BYU is like a city in and of itself kind of thing. Is like, we have the motto, like, the world is our campus, but sometimes it becomes the opposite. The campus is our world, kind of thing. Just a funny thing that a little quip that somebody made. But yeah, that sort of thing where, like, a lot of times there are ways in which BYU, there are ways in which the church, there are ways in which Utah, there are ways in which us as like people, like United States citizens, can become kind of insulated, and like just in our own little communities. But I've really found that Provo especially has a lot of different diversity of community. And so it has a really great food scene, music scene, and art scene. And when you start exploring those and becoming residents of that, like, you really branch out. And so that's part of what has drawn me to love Provo and to be comfortable with putting down roots here is like, yeah, I could go anywhere. I'm going to be a math teacher, so like I'm going to be needed anywhere. But I don't really feel the need for personal exploration as much as I do of like being purpose-driven and just like rooting myself down somewhere, and that somewhere can be Provo, and I'm happy for it to be Provo.
Very cool. Okay, so from San Diego, been here about 9 years now. Tell me, I mean, it sounds like you love Provo, obviously, and I guess Utah by association.
That's a really good question.
I want to get into that.
Yeah,
like, what's your favorite and least favorite things about Utah? Because there could be differences with you love Provo so much and BYU versus not Utah. So tell me.
Well, and interestingly, I'm not like BYU as well. Like I think BYU does a lot of things really, really well, and it's a really great school for undergraduate studies, especially if you're doing research. These are like larger things about BYU. BYU doesn't have as big of a community focus as I think they could have, like really getting students out into the community and working in the community and that sort of thing, which is something that I would really love to see and love to like help, is like students working with local restaurants and working with, just like working with businesses and just doing things in their field to serve the community, I think So the best things about BYU and Provo, best things about BYU is just like the students, the people here really make BYU shine. And I think it can also be the weakness as well, is that in some ways we have a lot of diversity, in some ways we don't. Like, we are very much a predominantly white school, and so it's like we need to acknowledge, I think it's important to acknowledge wherever we are, just the ways in which, like, kind of the ways in which our diversity is a good thing, the ways in which our diversity can be a bad thing, the ways in which like our homogeneity is a good thing, and the ways in which our homogeneity can be a bad thing. And just like really recognize and realize that there is a diversity of experience, and that like we can do a lot to understand other people, and like we can, it just, I think a lot of times in like smaller communities, we're scared of diversity because like understandably diversity can be kind of scary, but at the same time there's a lot of really good things that can come from that. And I think that's one of the other things with the Provo Local Foodie Card is like I like using food as an avenue to really get in touch with individual people's experiences, and like telling people stories and getting to know restaurant owners and being like, wow, this is really cool, like how much there is that just like brings us together, and food is one of those things that brings us together as a community. So
I love that. Cool.
Yeah.
If there was one thing you could change about Utah, what would it be?
That's a really good question. I think the big thing, and this is a little bit coming from more of a politics standpoint, not a national politics, because national politics freaking sucks. Just the divisiveness in general, like wherever you are on the spectrum, like there's just like a little bit too much hate. But it's like it's a difficult system and that sort of thing. But on a local level, like I think one thing that we do really well as Utahns is being very principled and being very driven in our roots. And so I think the struggle comes when like, especially like identity politics and identity kind of comes into the mix of like, I'll have to think, there's a few different threads that I'm trying to follow. Yeah. But I think the biggest thing is, I think what makes Utah strong, and then the weakness in it is what makes Utah strong is just like how much principle there is, how much goodness, like how much service, how much like people want to go and pursue good things, whether it's the outdoors, whether it's serving other people, whether it's pursuing like religious things. Like people seem to be very kind, seem like they are very kind and want to do good things. And I think sometimes if we have limiting beliefs relative to those of like, oh, only like goodness only looks like this type of thing, or only this type of people, or only this type of organization, I think those limiting beliefs can really make it so that, or only this type of identity kind of thing, or only this political faction, political sphere, just like being able to have more individual experiences and less of like, that I'm being super vague and kind of. But if that makes sense,
I understand what you're trying to say. I think that's actually really well said. You know, it's like, I don't know, we kind of put ourselves in boxes. Like this is the way goodness looks.
That's exactly.
Yeah. I love that. It's a great perspective. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that.
And I'm not saying that you need to explore for the sake of exploring and always be pushing an agenda or pushing boundaries or whatever, but like very much being principled enough to dig deep, abide by your roots, like understand your own culture, and get over the hurdle of also not being too focused on yourself that you then shield out others, is being authentic in a community rather than just focusing on the things that are yours or the things that are right in your immediate vicinity.
So. Love that. Well said. That's great. So another interesting thing about you I'd love for you to share is that you're both part of the LGBTQ community and the church.
Yeah,
and a lot of times people could think that those two things are at odds. I actually did get to interview, I don't know if you've heard of Ben Shalati on my show one time.
Yeah.
Super cool guy. And he explained really well like where he sits in that intersection. What about you? Tell us your story.
Yeah, that's another really good question. And again, I think this is a way in which, for me, it is hard because generally the queer community doesn't have a lot of natural spaces where people who are religious fit cleanly into boxes in the queer community. And the same is true in religion in general. There's not typically a lot of space where queer people in the LGBT community fit cleanly into boxes within religion, and definitely within the Latter-day Saint Church and Latter-day Saint theology is like, it's hard to fit cleanly into a box. So for me, that has allowed me the freedom to explore and figure out, okay, where do I want to fit in these communities, and how do I want to be a community builder in these spaces? And it definitely has led me, like, I think, especially relative to spaces like this where there is just such a division, I think, like, mapping my experience onto someone else's experience is not a good thing. Mapping my experience onto your own experience of like feeling like there isn't space for you in the church or in a community, like I think is a good thing, but like mapping it onto someone else's and being like, oh, well, Tim is in the church and queer, so this other person or whatever. But just generally, I have found a good space in the church where I'm able to both figure out queerness, and that means for me, like queerness is more than just like who you're going to be sexually attracted to or like have a relationship with. And it's more like it is being able to question kind of traditional gender roles, being able to question like what traditional relationships look like, and being able to explore like my own both masculinity and femininity in a way, because I don't fit cleanly into any box, I then have to explore and really figure out and be like, okay, where do I want to sit? And so that's been a really cool space to explore both in the church and in the queer community. And it's been really cool. There's UVU has a really cool queer institute that they do. I'm headed there later. I don't know if it's called like Queer Institute. It's a Christ in the Everlasting Gospel Institute class specifically centered at members of the LGBT community.
Very cool.
But just in general, like it's been a really cool thing. And I think that's one of the other things I think is really cool about Provo is there is space for all sorts of different communities. And so there is space for the queer community, there's space for queer overlap with BYU, queer disjoint with BYU, like wherever you want to be in the overlap or in the non-overlap in any community, there's space. And so
very cool.
Yeah.
Love that. That's great.
I tend to ramble, but like I have had a lot of really, really good experiences in like a lot of these communities. And so, I am sometimes difficult to be able to interview because, again, I've had so much experience with so many of these different communities, and I could do a full interview on any one of these.
Well, I'd love for you to give more than less. So
sure.
That's great.
Feel free to cut me off if you. Okay. What I'm saying.
Well, tell me about your coming to terms with your identity in the queer community and growing up.
Yeah, I think for me it wasn't as difficult. One of the things, so specifically, and this is something that like has come with time of me understanding where I am. Generally, how I identify is asexual, pan, or biromantic. So it's like I can have crushes on anybody, but I'm not going to be like sexually attracted to anybody or like really even like physically attracted that much. And so that's kind of where I have been. And so it has been a little bit easier because like in the church, we have lots of limiting beliefs and adages. One of those adages is like, you can be gay, just don't live the gay lifestyle. And you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? And what it really means is like, you can identify as gay, but don't do things that can be considered gay. Which like, and for me, during the times in my life where I have wanted to just kind of blend in, just kind of pass and like just go with the flow, I've been able to do that. Now, more recently, I have like been able to explore relationships with guys and just kind of been able to explore like friendships within the queer community a little bit more. I'm still, again, this is all lots of figuring out, but I'm still like planning on marrying a woman. I think that like my relationships with women have been really good. But yeah, it's just kind of a figuring out process. And so it's been a slow process of understanding myself, understanding that I'm not going to fit cleanly into any of these boxes. And so let's just like create a new space. And I think that's one of the biggest things is like, if there is not a space for yourself, it's not, a lot of times it's not that you can find a space, but you have to build that space. And that's what you talked about earlier with your podcast is like, you wanted a podcast where you could just like learn about different people and learn about the diversity of experiences, really get into people's lives. And you were like, I can't find that naturally on my own. And so you're going and building that and creating that. And I think that's really cool.
You're way more articulate than I am, because that is exactly what it is. And I've been able to meet so many cool people and make so many good friends doing this. That's like the highlight for me for having the show.
100%.
Tell me about your family. Are they still all back in San Diego?
So yeah, all of my family is graduated now. So like out of the house, graduated. I'm one of 5 brothers. Okay. So my parents, we still have our house in San Diego, but then my parents are living temporarily in Phoenix while my dad's doing a job there. And then I am one of 5 boys. So there's the oldest, and then twins, and then me, and then the youngest. So the oldest one has 3 kids and 1 on the way. He lives in Michigan. The twins, one of them is gay and living in San Francisco and has a boyfriend. And like family is very supportive of that, which is really cool. One of them is married and just had a kid in August. And then there's me. I'm just chilling in Provo and probably the only one of my family that will stay in Utah. They're very much adventurous and wanting to go and explore different things. Right on. And then my youngest brother just had a daughter last week. So what's been fun is all 3 of my married brothers are having kids this year. And so it's like 3 cousins that are going to be really close. For 2 of them, it's the first one. And so I have two brothers. The twins are actually both living in San Francisco. Oldest is living in Michigan. The youngest is living in my childhood home in San Diego. And we're just,
That's good to hear.
Yeah,
cool.
So very much it's kind of spread out among all different sorts of things.
I love that. Were there any experiences you can think of as a child that have helped shape who you are now?
That's a really good question. I think, so like just generally, the biggest things that I would point to growing up, like principles or like key aspects that my parents lived around is my dad is intensely practical. So he very much like it does things that are extremely practical. He's very exploratory as well. Like he has created some of his own companies. I definitely get my own like kind of entrepreneurship and ADHD from him. But very much like, that kind of exploratory, but also being intensely practical. And then my mom is just someone who's extremely outgoing and kind. And so I have the extrovert bug myself of just like wanting to go out and wanting to explore, meet new people, have new experiences, that giving me a lot of energy, but also doing it in a way that's kind and a way that's really genuine and genuinely getting to know different people. And so I think that kind of combination leads me to create new ideas and really like work hard to bring them into fruition and being centered on other people and centered on community and centered on experiences and that sort of thing. So I'm kind of in that way very much a mix of my family and like my parents.
Okay, right on. So it sounds like your family, and they're spread out because you got Michigan, Phoenix, California here. I know, you're Utahn for life, but if you were
I wouldn't say, again, I wouldn't say I'm like, I don't feel, and this is partially, sorry, not to interject.
Provo for life? Or
Provo for life, yeah.
Utah for life.
Utah, I don't like super, I don't know.
Okay.
I think especially in the moment that I was like in kind of the time that I am born in the world, kind of in 1998, like being kind of millennial, kind of Gen Z and stuff like that, I a lot of times feel much more like a citizen of the world than I feel like a citizen of the United States, or like as a Californian or like anything else. It's like I very much feel really connected to the rest of the world. And so even though like I'm living in Provo, I don't see myself as like, oh, die hard like Provo, or like I love BYU, but I've never been to a BYU football game. Like I'm not like a die hard, like I think the things that BYU are doing is great, but again, I think, and especially because I haven't fit, again, going back to the boxes analogy, because I haven't fit cleanly into any of the boxes, is like, I very much have found myself as someone who can drift anywhere, but then when I decide on a place, it's not because of the place itself, it's because I have like thought about it and been like, okay, this is where I want to end up. And so I could just as easily have chosen anywhere else in the United States or in the world to end up, but this is where I really feel like kind of feel a more purpose and calling kind of thing.
I like that. No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, that's. I feel like that's. I'm interrupting your thought of like being a Utah and being a Provoan or whatever, but that feels like something that's important for me to articulate about like the way that I find myself in the world.
Well, and that's very cool. That's very unique too, to like think that like you, I don't know, your strongest loyalty and tie is really just like, I don't know, humanity and being part of the world and stuff. That's pretty interesting.
Which can also be really difficult when you're like witnessing, like, and now more than ever we can witness like large scale tragedy and that sort of thing. And like we are much more tuned into the suffering of others than we have ever been in human history, except for like specific people in wartime.
Except for being there yourself.
Yeah,
social media.
But like social media and just the news and that sort of thing, you're like keyed into a lot of these things, and it can be really, really difficult. And so, that's one of the big things that I've like grappled with and kind of worked through is like, how do I at the same time understand and like, how do I exist as someone who's part of a globalized society and at the same time like get stuff done on my own and figure out what my place is in the world when there's so many options as well.
Love that. Okay. So if you didn't have to worry about money, you didn't have to go get your degree for teaching math and all that, how would you spend your time? What would you do? Would it be in the world of politics, do you think, or no? I
live a life full of contradictions because, for example, I hate politics generally. Obviously, being like politics is great, but like the ways in which we make it such a big deal is like politics is about us all coming together as communities and societies and agreeing so that we can live a better life together than we would separate. Like that is the main function of politics, is to build society where we live, where the common, like building a government for the common good. And so like, I think I am going to be somewhat involved in the government, but very much like as a nonpartisan, as someone who is trying to bring people together, as someone who's trying to represent people's beliefs rather than just like saying, oh, well, I've studied political theory, so go and vote me in and I will know all of the things. I'm not trying to be the smartest person in the room, but I do want to be the most well-connected person. And then I think if I didn't have to, if I didn't have to do other things, I would love to be like an elementary school teacher, and just like really be in people's lives, and then being able to do things like content creation and having my own projects and ways in which my individual interests and my individual passions and hobbies can help benefit other people, but also living a really rich life myself.
Very cool. That's sweet. I'm curious, so based on, your worldviews and also your, like you mentioned your father, like having businesses and that kind of thing, how would you define success? What does that mean to you?
Oh, that's actually a really good question. So there's kind of like, I will differentiate between like capital S success and lowercase x success. Lowercase s is just like whether you achieve the things that you want to, or whether you pass or fail a class, is whether you experience a success or a failure. In business, there's the phrase "fail early, fail often," and it's not talking about like you should be a failure, you should seek out these things, but you should have enough things that you're exploring that you get to experience failure in 100 different ways, so that when your one golden idea comes, you know where to plant it in the ground, as opposed to someone who just stumbles upon that and gets lucky and then is like, oh, well, I don't know what to do with this golden thing. And so for me, one of the ways, and so capital S success is being able to pursue the life that you want to live, to create a world that you want to live in, and to be able to make progress toward that. And then the lowercase s success isn't as important. I have kind of, especially having ADHD and kind of struggling in traditional systems of education and that sort of thing, is like I'm able to figure out ways that work for me, but sometimes like I really do struggle and fail classes over and over, and then am able to pass them after a while. And so for me, one of the ways that I have come to identify also is not as a failure, but as a failer, as someone who is able to fail over and over and is able to do well, like is able to learn from my own failures as easily as my own successes. And so like I am going to continue trying no matter what. And so for me, failure is an exceptionally important part because, and this is relative to math as well, is there's only one correct answer, but there are so many incorrect things that we can do in math that can teach us things about mathematics. And it's more important, like if a student, for example, if you as a student were always getting all of your problems, all of your math problems right, then that proves to me as a teacher that I'm not trying hard enough, that we're not learning fast enough, because that means if you're always doing everything right, that means there's no growth, there's no learning, there's no capacity for you to do any better because you're already doing 100%. And so for me, it is definitely like a struggle and a balance to like stay motivated while experiencing failure. But that's like a place that I try to live in, is a place where I can experience failure often, because that means I'm at the edge of my capacity. I'm at the edge of what I am comfortable with, what I am able to be successful in, and that I'm constantly growing. So
I love that. Can you maybe tell us more about your mindset during those moments of repeated failure, or maybe an example you can think of?
Yeah, I mean the immediate, and I won't like pretend that I'm better than anybody else. The immediate like mindset is, wow, this sucks. I hate this. Like I just like either I want to give up or like I should stop doing this all the time. But I think again, the bigger thing is like, and this is relative to anything, is digging into that deeper success, digging into those deeper principles and being like, hey, is this for the world that I want to exist, is this something that needs to happen? So like, I want a world in which like we can fail, and that like we can learn, and that people can find their own place in the world. And so it's like, yeah, is it okay that I am failing classes over and over? Yes. Do I want myself, do I wish I had teachers, like elementary teachers, high school math teachers, that knew what it was like to fail classes and knew what it was like I am good at math, but at the same time really struggle with like school and that sort of thing. And so it's like, do I wish that I had those? And I'm like, yeah. And so for me, it's being motivated by the things that I want to see in the future. And so a lot of times I do get like down on myself and like get pretty depressed and that sort of thing. But I also allow myself to be like, okay, I'm going to keep trying because this is something that is important to me. And like, I am, just going to kind of keep working at it and keep living based off of the principles that are important to me. So
I love that.
If that, cool. It's not a specific example, but like
no, it's good to get your insight into that mindset, because like I agree with a lot of things you say, but sometimes when you're in like the moment, it can be kind of I don't know. It's so much easier to think about these things on a bigger picture, bigger scale than when you're actually in the moment, you know. Yeah.
One of the other things as well, because I was trying to think of a good story that could be illustrative, is like there have been semesters at BYU that I have failed, and a lot of times my little prayer in my heart at the beginning of this semester is like, okay, I'm going to pick the classes that I feel that I can be successful in, that I feel like are going to help me stretch and become better. And if I fail, let me fail, because let that be, like, whatever it is, let that be what is going to happen. And so through the failures, like, I tend to look towards the next option, whatever the next option is. And for failures in my path, I see failure much more as a product of my circumstances rather than how hard I am trying, because a lot of times I am trying my hardest and I'm like trying to get the support that I need and figure out like the ways in which I can set goals for myself and structure and accommodations and that sort of thing. And so it's like, ultimately, if I fail, like, that's all right. That's not like the end of the world. It's probably my circumstances, and I'm just going to try again, and the circumstances will change, and I am going to grow and become better at it as things go on. So
Love that. That's super cool.
yeah.
Maybe on a more fun note,
Sure.
outside of the foodie, Provo Local Foodie,
Yeah.
do you have any other hobbies or interests that are unique?
So other things, I'm really involved in the neurodivergent community at BYU. So I helped start the ADHD club and ran that for a little bit, and have helped in like the autistic space at BYU. That's a fun thing that I do. I also write children's poetry, which is a fun thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, wow. Do you have anything published or not yet?
Rin is the friend that introduced me to you.
Yep.
They are helping me work on getting published and that sort of thing. But I wrote children's poems through high school and that sort of thing. So very much I just kind of have the creative itch of like wanting to, like, in addition to my principles telling me that I should be someone who creates things in the world to make a better world, is like I have that itch to go and create things. Yeah, so I think those are some of I also do theater. So I've been in some musicals recently. I was just in The Wizard of Oz as the Cowardly Lion, which was such a fun role over the summer. You know, being in between the two like years of Wicked Part 1 and Wicked Part 2, everybody, especially everybody in Utah, did Wizard of Oz, and so.
Oh yeah. I actually did show choir in high school myself, so singing and dancing. But the theater, there's no singing, right? It's just like all
No,
acting.
so musicals.
Yeah, musical theater. Perfect.
Yeah,
Okay.
so very much singing. I've done like some choirs, but like Anyway, so
right on.
I do again with ADHD. I do a lot, and then I'm like, oh, and by the way, I'm majoring in math education. And they're like, you're gonna be a teacher, and I'm like, yeah, it has nothing to do with any of the other like projects that I'm working on. But I try and work on creating a good synthesis to a single person as I can
great.
with all of this diversity of interest and stuff like that.
The definition of well-rounded, that's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah, in some ways.
I love that. Well, in closing,
Yeah.
is there anything out there that you wish people knew about you?
That I wish people knew about me. That's a really good question. I think that particular question isn't like sparking any super big.
Let me rephrase it then.
Yeah.
If there was only one thing you could communicate about yourself to people, if they could only know one thing about Tim, what would you want that one thing to be?
I think the thing that I would want to communicate to others, and the thing that I is one of my main core core ideals for myself, is being passionate about things. So both on, again, a lot of the stuff that I have is both like on a personal scale. I have lots of things that I am very, very passionate about. And you said a well-rounded person, and I sometimes feel like a well-spiky person of like having so many different things that I'm just like deeply interested in that might not super connect. But I also think that that's one of the coolest things about people in general, is when they are deeply involved in the things that they do, and just like really like deeply involved and deeply making things, making the kind of art that they want to see created in the world, working in the types of businesses, doing the things, whatever like people are passionate about, I think is a really great way to have ultimately, a well-rounded world, is where there are people who have intense passions and intense things that they're passionate about, and that the thing that connects us is not necessarily that we're all doing the same thing, but that we all connect because we're all trying hard to do things that are important to us, and that we can acknowledge that, like, hey, you're doing something that's really important to you, I'm doing something that's really important to me. We are both like living the human experience, and that's something that I think like I would want to inspire other people by as well, is just the level to which I am fully living my life in a deeply passionate way. So.
Fantastic. Thanks for letting me get to know you, Tim.
Yeah, thank you so much. I also feel like I would love to interview you sometime.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. No, we'll catch up.
I hope you have. Yeah, I hope you have a good podcast where you get to be on the other side and they get to know you, maybe for like the anniversary, or if you haven't already done it.
That's a good idea, actually. I do need to show myself, but thank you again, and thanks for being a person in Utah, Tim.
100%.